my mother once said, her voice light as the steam rising from a cup of tea. Not everyone is born to shine, Lily. Some are stars and some are just the sky behind them. She said it when I had just turned 20, still wearing the freshly issued uniform, stiff with newness, gleaming with pride. She didn't mean to hurt me. At least, I want to believe she didn't. But that sentence, soft as wind, sharp as glass, sketched a crack into my memory that never healed. Every holiday, every visit home, I heard it again. Not in words, but in the warmth they reserved for my younger brother Zachary, the family's golden child. They never said I was a failure, but sometimes silence cuts deeper than words. When Zachary was promoted to major, the family flooded social media like he'd won a national medal. But when I came back from a 7-month deployment overseas, under conditions so classified they don't exist on paper, the airport was empty. No banner, no embrace, not a single waiting gaze. My father simply said, "You're always so busy," as if I'd missed a dental checkup, not returned from a place even maps don't dare mark. That Thanksgiving night, I arrived home on time. The kitchen was warm, full of cousins, friends, familiar faces. But my usual seat had been taken by the son of my dad's old friend, who had just been accepted into law school. "He's young, full of promise," my mother said as she pulled me aside. "You can stand and eat by the sink." So I stood, plate in hand, leaning against the faucet. My food cooled slowly, while the medals I brought home stayed forgotten. In a box. In the garage. That night, I made myself a promise. I would never wait for their approval again. I had survived enemy fire. I didn't need to survive the Cold War in my own family. My name is Lily Harper, eldest daughter in a 3-generation military family. We grew up just outside Fayetteville, North Carolina, not far from Fort Liberty. In our house, the military wasn't just a career, it was belief, legacy. My father, Charles Harper, retired as an Air Force colonel. My mother, Evelyn, had been a combat medic, quieter and tougher than anyone I'd ever met. Zachary, my younger brother, is now a major in the Army. And me? I'm the one who gave up. They said I couldn't handle the discipline, that I dropped out of West Point after my first year. The truth is, I didn't drop out. I was recruited into a special intelligence unit, so classified it never had a graduation, never had a ceremony, never had a framed photo on the wall. Just one-way tickets to places civilians should never set foot. 20 years passed. I was never absent. I was just quietly erased from their lives. I still sent birthday flowers to my mother each year. Still mailed Christmas cards to my dad, postmarked from a fake address in Baltimore. I watched from afar as Zachary got married at a military chapel, as my nephew was born, as their lives unfolded like smooth water. Once, at a family gathering, a cousin leaned in and half-joked, "There's one family photo where someone's been cropped out. They said it was to balance the frame, but wasn't that you?" I didn't answer. How could they understand I once coordinated a rescue operation in Africa that saved 18 humanitarian workers? How could they picture me losing 3 teammates during a mission in the Middle East, and still carrying that weight today? No one asked, and I never told. I received a text from my mother on a quiet fall afternoon as golden leaves drifted across DC's still streets. It was blunt, her usual style. "Emily's getting promoted to captain. Ceremony Saturday. Come if you're free." No "how are you?" No "we miss you." Just a message like it was sent to the wrong number. But I knew it wasn't. Emily is my youngest sister, 8 years younger, always the family's sweetheart. Sweet, gentle, praised for everything she did. And me? Too strong, too quiet, too distant. Never quite the right shape to fit this family's mold. I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering. Part of me wanted to delete it, let it go. But another part the one still sore from that Thanksgiving dinner, whispered, "This time, you're not going to be welcomed. You're going so they'll see you standing." I drove through the night from DC to Georgia. No announcement, no makeup, just a small suitcase and the one dress uniform I had left. It wasn't polished, wasn't new, but it was mine, and it carried a story they had never heard. The house hadn't changed. White siding, gray roof, that same old wooden door. When I stepped inside, my mother was arranging name cards. She barely looked up. Ven said, "Change your shirt, you'll sit next to Emily. Don't interrupt her speech." That's how greetings went. My dad patted my shoulder like he was handing candy to a rookie who'd just dropped out of boot camp. "Good you made it back." The pre-ceremony dinner carried a formality so heavy it felt suffocating. Emily descended the staircase like a princess stepping out of a military magazine. Everyone gasped and complimented her. When she saw me, she smiled politely and said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "That's my sister. Used to be in the military for a bit, now she does something in an office. I think she retired early?" The room chuckled. Polite. Light. But it cut deep. I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because the truth was far too big to cram into a shallow dinner conversation. The next morning, the promotion ceremony was held in the main hall at Fort Benning. The room was solemn, arranged to the rules of decorum, with seating divided by rank and title. I was placed in the very last row, name tag handwritten, no title. Emily stood at the podium, radiant in her perfectly tailored uniform. She spoke of perseverance, discipline, ideals, and honor. Every word was flawless, until she said, "I've learned that some wear the uniform but don't carry its honor." She paused, just long enough for everyone to know exactly who she meant. A few eyes shifted toward me. I remained still. My heartbeat didn't change. My face didn't flinch. Then the rear doors opened. Almost the entire hall stood up. A man walked in, posture upright like a flagpole, silver hair neatly combed, eyes sharp like a drawn blade. General Gregory Hunt, a living legend, once the commanding officer in the 2014 Baltic campaign, a mission I'd served under him. He didn't glance at anyone else. His eyes scanned the room and stopped where I sat. My chest tightened. I thought he might give a brief nod or pass by like usual. But he didn't. He walked straight toward me. His polished black shoes struck the hall floor like a metronome, leading a song no one else knew. In front of hundreds of stunned faces, he stood tall, raised his hand in a crisp salute, and said with clarity, "Brigadier General Harper, an honor to see you again." The air felt like it had been vacuumed out of the room. Emily fell silent. My mother dropped her pen. My father froze. Several younger officers exchanged confused glances. One whispered, "She's a general?" I stood, not to answer the stares, but because I would never let someone who once trusted me salute alone. I returned the gesture. Formal, precise, without a smile. The entire room fell into a heavy silence. Somewhere in the distance, the ceiling fan still turned, like the spinning of time itself. And I, once dismissed as the one who gave up, now stood at the center. Not by fame, but by a truth no one had dared to face. The ceremony resumed, but no one was paying attention to the speech or medals anymore. Every gaze turned toward me, or the void they had once chosen not to see. Emily stepped down from the stage, quiet, saying nothing. I didn't need admiration. I just needed them to see me, truly, for the first time. I left the hall without a word. No one stopped me. No one followed. But I didn't need them to. All I carried was General Hunt's brief nod and Emily's confused eyes. That afternoon, I found a brown envelope neatly placed on the desk in my base hotel room. No sender, no stamp, just one printed page from an email with a few lines. Lily Harper once led an unauthorized mission that caused civilian casualties in Yemen, 2019. The incident was hidden under intelligence protocols. I was no longer the 20-year-old girl who panicked at invisible accusations. But when I reached the last line, nearly identical to a top-secret report I once wrote myself, my heart slowed. That report had only been accessed by 3 people. Me, a senior analyst, and a young aide in field training at the time. That aide was Emily. I began combing through every backup, metadata logs, system journals. Every time a file is touched, even for a second, it leaves a mark. Within hours, I traced the access chain. 3 months ago, at Fort Leonard Wood, Emily's personal IP had used indirect credentials to download an encrypted copy from an old archive server. She hadn't been smart enough to erase everything, but smart enough to send the email through a disguised VPN, bouncing through Romania, Germany, and Canada. The question was no longer who did this. It was, why? That night, I found Emily standing alone behind the logistics wing where everyone had dispersed after the celebration. She was still in uniform, but the brightness on her face from earlier at the podium was gone. I didn't mince words. I held the paper up in front of her. "Did you send this?" Her eyes blinked slowly. Not surprised, not denying. Just silent. For a moment so long it hurt to breathe. "Yes," she said. I nodded. No yelling, no blaming, just asked. "Why?" Emily gave a bitter smile, one I had never seen from the sister who'd always been sheltered. "Because you weren't supposed to win," she said softly. "You walked away from everything, and I stayed. I fought for every step. You don't get to come back and steal all the light." Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes cracked. "Did you know? Even after you disappeared, they kept talking about you. Mom and Dad, everyone. They'd say, 'Lily's smarter, Lily's stronger.' And me? Nothing I did was ever enough." I looked at Emily for a long time. For the first time, I didn't see an officer. Odd arrival. Just my little sister, the girl who once held my hand in the backyard, crying over a stuffed dog with a missing eye. I took a deep breath. "You know, Emily, not everyone's meant to run ahead. But that doesn't mean you're not good enough. The problem is, you tried to drag others down instead of rising on your own." She turned away, wiping the corner of her eye quickly. I didn't say anything more. I turned and walked away, leaving her in the dark. Not out of anger, but because I understood. Some wounds can't be healed by others. They must be faced alone. 3 days later, I was summoned to the senior command office. No prior notice, no explanation. General Hunt sat there, stern but not hostile. In front of him was a short report, clipped with the original copy of the accusation email. "We know," he said plainly. "Someone wants to take you down. But the traces they left behind are too many." I nodded. "I'm not here to ask for mercy. I'm here to help uncover who's behind it." "You're sure?" he asked. "If we dig, everything will come to light. Not just your truth, but Emily's secrets too." I didn't hesitate. No one stands above the truth. Not even the ones we once loved most. As I left his office, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, just one line. "You thought she was the only one? There's more than you think." I stood frozen in the middle of the base courtyard, where young soldiers trained under the afternoon sun. A chill ran down my spine. Emily hadn't acted alone. And whoever was behind the curtain might know far more than I ever imagined. I hadn't even begun tracing the anonymous message when it happened. 3 a.m.? A blaring emergency alert shook me from sleep like a bomb. The message read, "Confirmed breach of classified data involves device formerly assigned to Colonel Lily Harper. Immediate summons." It took me exactly 90 seconds to get into uniform and out the door. The cold hit like knives. Fort Benning, usually silent like a graveyard at night, now lit up with red warning lights. No one spoke. Just hurried footsteps and anxious eyes not yet fully awake. Inside the Strategic Coordination Center, I was handed a folder. A data package from Operation Night Echo had just been leaked to a dark web forum, not even 30 minutes earlier. What made my breath catch? The data included a code fragment that had only ever existed on my old laptop, the one I used in 2018, the one I had turned in and wiped according to protocol. The question now was, who accessed a device that was supposed to be dead? General Hunt entered the briefing room just minutes later. He didn't waste time. We need someone with enough clearance, enough system knowledge, and no fear of confronting the truth. And the only person who ever managed the full Night Echo campaign is you. You'll lead the special investigation team. I sat upright. Who's on the team? He exhaled, not hiding the discomfort in his tone. Your father, Colonel Charles Harper, was a tactical advisor in the early phase of the campaign. Your mother, Evelyn, has expertise in digital forensics and biochemical response. And Emily, she just completed a cyber intelligence training course in Quantico. She knows the central server architecture inside and out. I stayed silent. Part of me wanted to refuse immediately after everything that had happened. Now I had to work alongside the very people who had doubted me or even betrayed me. But I also knew better than anyone, when a system leaks from the inside, only those within the house can truly trace its origin. I'll take the assignment, I said firmly. Our first team meeting was held in a soundproof room, the white lights as cold as a hypodermic needle. No one made eye contact. My father read the opening notes like he was delivering a eulogy. My mother said nothing, only scribbled notes. Emily remained the same. Serious, emotion. I laid out my theory. The breach hadn't started from an act of sabotage, but from a chain of unintentional triggers, set in motion by something planted long ago. We started going through each data packet and discovered something chilling. A small, compressed file hidden inside logistics_report 2017.a, a seemingly harmless file used in logistical operations. Inside it was a Trojan code, meticulously encrypted, with the ability to awaken and extract classified data from any secure directory, but only when accessed at the right time using a login with just enough clearance but not full authority. Emily froze when she saw the access log. This is the file I opened when reviewing the old archive during my training 3 months ago. My eyes met my mother's. Neither of us said anything, but I knew she understood too. This wasn't Emily's fault. The trap had been set years ago. I followed the malware's digital trail, and the name that appeared in the final log line took my breath away. Derek Glade, a high-ranking cybersecurity officer, someone I had worked with in Baghdad in 2017, and the same man I once reported for manipulating strategic systems to force through a compromised mission. After that, he was quietly reassigned. No formal reprimand, no noise. But I knew Derek never forgot. He didn't need to break the system from the outside. He just had to plant a disease and wait for someone to water it by accident. My mother flipped through an old file folder. She stopped suddenly. Lily, she said softly, do you remember Operation Desert Key back in 2017? This is the report you wrote, but there's a section you never submitted. Someone altered it behind your back. I looked closely, and she was right. The report had been modified to conceal an anomaly in satellite routing, the exact behavior I had reported about Derek. I stood up. There was no doubt anymore. Derek didn't just plant malware. He used Emily to reopen a wound, to make me look suspicious, isolate me, and erase me from the system. But he forgot one thing. We were a family. Fractured, but not broken. 3 days after we identified Derek Glade as the source of the malware and fully traced the entire breach chain, I sat alone in the Special Ops meeting room. Dim lights above, wind whistling softly through the window frame. On the table sat an internal disciplinary memo for Emily Harper. No criminal charges, since the activation of the malicious software was deemed unintentional, but the Special Oversight Board had decided Emily would receive a formal reprimand and be barred from any promotion for the next 5 years. I was required to sign the confirmation as the disciplinary supervisor. My eyes stopped at her signature, steady strokes, but slightly shaky. No one forced her. No one blamed her. Emily had voluntarily written her statement accepting responsibility, knowing full well the cost would be high. At the closing session of the Special Investigation Task Force, with representatives from Eastern Military Command, the Intelligence Directorate, and Homeland Security in attendance, I delivered the final report. After the technical briefing, I was about to end with a standard acknowledgement when my father stood up. He stepped out from his seat and walked to the podium, a place he had never voluntarily approached without an order. He looked at me, then around the entire room, and said slowly, "Throughout my career, I believed that honor came from what you could see: medals, citations, stamps, reports." He paused, his eyes blurred slightly. "But today, I've realized. Some live in the shadows, without praise, yet remain heroes. And I've spent too many years not seeing that my daughter is one of them." The air in the room seemed to stop. I saw my mother gently raise her hand to her mouth. Emily kept her head down. As for me, though my heart felt unbearably heavy, I stood tall and said nothing. But deep inside, I knew that apology, from the one who had remained silent the longest, had stitched up a part of me I thought would never mend. 1 month later, at the Regional Military Cybersecurity Conference, I was invited as the guest of honor, as a strategic expert and the lead investigator of the largest system breach of the year. On the guest list I submitted, I added one name at the last minute: Emily Harper, Captain, Reserve Officer, candidate of the Special Tactical Coordination Program. No explanation, no instructions. On the day of the conference, the hall was packed. Senior officers from multiple states, NATO representatives, even a few international advisors were present. I stepped onto the stage, no makeup, no cue cards, just a campaign map and a story. I spoke about mistakes, about how a single overlooked link could become the first crack in a long chain of failures. I didn't blame anyone. I didn't paint myself as a victim. I simply told the truth, honestly, and let it speak for itself. When I finished, the room went silent. No applause, no whispers. Until I said, "And now I'd like to invite someone up here. Someone who once stood against me, who once doubted me, but who also had the courage to face the consequences and chose to learn instead of hiding." Emily rose from the second row. The light hit her uniformed shoulder. For the first time, I saw her with no makeup, no pride, just herself. She walked to the podium, holding the microphone with both hands, her voice trembling but never breaking. "I used to think that being a good soldier meant standing firm, never bowing, never admitting mistakes. But today I understand. True honor comes from the humility to learn, especially from the one you once envied." The entire room stood up. Not for me, not for Emily, but for what the military and the world always needs: the courage to admit mistakes and choose change. At the end of the conference, when everyone had left, I stood alone in the hallway, looking out through the glass window. Sunset was bathing the base in soft red light, the kind of light that feels gentle but deep, like a quiet change taking root inside me. Emily came beside me, said nothing, and handed me a folder. "I'm drafting a proposal to reform the Reserve Officer Training Program, based on the tactics you used in Night Echo. You don't have to sign, just read it." I looked at the folder cover. There was a handwritten note in green ink. Moving forward, I didn't promise to help, but I nodded. And in that nod, I felt a family that was no longer a wound, but a healed scar, Still tender, but no longer bleeding. I sent the dinner invitation by mail. No email, no text, just a stamped envelope, handwritten with care. Dinner at 6 o'clock Saturday, at number 9 Pine Oak Street. Don't bring anything, just bring time and a quiet heart ready to listen. My father, my mother, and Emily each received their own envelope. No extra notes, no high hopes. I just knew it was time to tell my story in my voice, the one no one had ever asked to hear. The little house I rented on the edge of Augusta wasn't anything special. Faded red shingles, ivory-painted walls, and an old oak table in the middle of the living room. But it was the first place I chose to live, not because of duty, not because of orders, but for myself. I cooked dinner with my own hands. No takeout, no prepackaged meals, no need for anything fancy. Just honey-glazed roast chicken like Mom used to make, a chilled salad Emily liked, and a loaf of rustic bread. Dad's favorite back when he was stationed in Europe. At exactly 5:59 p.m. the doorbell rang. Dad arrived first. He wore a white shirt, dark khakis. Rarely did I see him out of uniform. He nodded, walked in without a word, but his eyes scanned the place like a familiar ops zone. Mom came next. She brought a plate of peach cobbler. Still her. Quiet, but for the first time she looked at me without avoiding my eyes. That look, no longer cold, just cautious, like she was standing before someone she hadn't yet fully met. Emily came last. No uniform, no laptop. Just a girl with her hair tied back, holding a bouquet of white hydrangeas, the same flowers I once planted in the backyard as a child, crushed accidentally when Dad was training. "You used to say this flower is stronger than it looks," she said, handing them to me. I smiled softly. "Like the one who planted it." We sat at the table. No one rushed to eat. No one talked politics. No one brought up the conference. I poured each glass of water, then slowly stood up. "Before we eat," I said, I need to tell my family a story. A story that none of the three of you have ever heard in full." They looked at me, quiet, waiting, and I began to speak. I told them about my first mission in Tunisia, where I had to pose as a nurse to rescue a kidnapped expert. About the nights curled up in a bunker in Ukraine, listening to bombs fall without having permission to call for backup. I told them about the time I ordered the destruction of a communications center to save an Australian recon team, and how I was investigated for 8 months afterward. I told them how I refused a prestigious medal because accepting it would have cost an ally their strategic post. About the times I returned to a rented room in Berlin, my hands still stained with a comrade's blood, with no one to tell, not even that I had made it back alive. My father lowered his head, his hands clenched into fists. My mother let out a soft sigh, not of disappointment, but like a weight she'd been holding for too long had finally been released. Emily was the only one who stood. She walked toward me, slowly, without saying a word. She just placed her hand on my shoulder. No apology, no excuse, but that touch was enough to tell me she had chosen to stay, not to chase the spotlight anymore. My father got up, walked to the wooden cabinet in the corner of the room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a photo frame, the family portrait from 2003. He looked at it for a moment, then turned and said, "This picture is missing someone." He placed it on the table. "Next time we take one, we'll make sure no one gets cut out of the frame." 1 month later, I began teaching a soft strategy course at the Southeast Military Academy, where young officers are trained in non-traditional tactics. And Emily always sat in the front row, never late, never afraid to debate. But she no longer tried to prove anything. She listened with both ears and with her heart, something even I had once forgotten to do. At the end of one class, I noticed a line she had written in her notebook, something I never expected her to pick up on. "Not everyone who leads is the strongest. Sometimes, the one who pauses to wait for others is the true guide. That day, when I returned home, I passed through the living room. The new photo frame sat neatly on the shelf. 4 people. No one cut out, no one left behind. I stared at it for a long time. Then I sat down and wrote this line in my journal. We're not a perfect family anymore, but we've learned how to stand beside each other without hiding anymore. Lily's story isn't just a journey from darkness to light. It's proof that the truth, no matter how long it's been buried, will always find a way to speak. In real life, countless women sacrifice in silence, carry heavy burdens, and are forgotten within their own families. The important thing isn't validation from others, it's the courage to stand up and tell your story. Because sometimes healing begins with simply being heard. What do you think about Lily's journey and the changes in her family? Leave your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, real-life stories about family and resilience.